In the 20th century, Robert Fripp was one of the best musicians ever. But he didn't have wild hair, or dark sunglasses, get into any love trouble, or try to please everyone. It wasn't his goal to be famous. He didn't want fame or praise, and that's exactly why he became an icon. Fripp was the heart of the progressive rock band King Crimson, whose albums were each like a whole new world of sound. They were way ahead of their time and broke all the rules. Then they disappeared, leaving no trace behind. While bands like Pink Floyd and Genesis became very popular at the same time, King Crimson stayed a secret because they were always changing and very extreme. What made a man who was quiet and didn't talk about himself or try to please his fans become known as the creative genius behind a whole genre? Famous musicians like David Bowie, Brian Eno, and Peter Gabriel all looked for Fripp as a kind of original musical genius. Fripp didn't live to be popular. His job was to find things that no one else had heard. Beginnings. On May 16, 1946, Robert Fripp was born in Wimborne Minster, England. It is a quiet town in the county of Dorset. Arthur Fripp was his father. He was a hard-working, regular grocer who strongly believed in the morals of the working class. Edith, his mother, was strict and practical. She never saw weakness in anyone, not even her own child. The family did not have any artists, a music room, or philosophy books. Instead, there was work, duty, and quiet. At a very young age, Fripp showed signs that he didn't quite fit in with his surroundings. He could read when he was 4 years old and play chess when he was 6. He would often sit quietly for hours and think about things that most kids would never think about, such as how time works or why people need to be alone. Robert wasn't part of the group at school and didn't have many friends or talk to anyone very often. He also wasn't a problem. He was too smart to teach, but too quiet to scold, according to his teachers. He was 11 years old when he found his sister's cheap, long-forgotten guitar tucked away in a corner. He felt like he had found a way to make his ideas sound like music. Fripp didn't know it was art yet. It was just a way for him to be without having to use words to describe himself. During his teens, Fripp didn't have any close friends and didn't do any sports. He read Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, and later G. Gurdjieff, thinkers of being and will. It was strange how he played the guitar too. Fripp didn't like being on stage. He wanted to find out how sound could represent vague ideas like space or the idea of self. He had no hopes of becoming famous. In an interview years later, he said that when he was 15, he was really set on becoming an accountant, which made sense and was supported by his family. He stopped, not because he was bored, but because he couldn't live without being able to understand sound. Parents were shocked by his choice because they had always thought the arts were for lazy people. Fripp started to develop a very strict personal routine during this time, setting strict times to study, practice, meditate, and write in a detailed diary. Not drinking, smoking, or going to parties. He got up early every morning and practiced alone, even when he was in his late 70s. And I don't think of myself as a guitar player. I am a person looking for sound. During a master class, Fripp once told his students, "The guitar is just the tool." Childhood and adolescence for Robert Fripp were not marked by obvious tragedy. There was a quiet loneliness and a mind that worked differently below the surface. Self-questioning all the time, and a quiet fight between the need to discover one's inner world and the pressures of society to fit in. People used to judge your worth by how loud you spoke, but Fripp chose quiet and used it to make music that was different from everyone else's. Early career. When Robert Fripp was 20, he didn't do what most working musicians do. To make money, he didn't join cover bands or play bar gigs. Instead, he studied the structure of music, practiced using his own method, and read philosophy while he worked on his skills. In the 1960s, he was a strange figure in London's music scene. He was too serious, too quiet, and not interested in what people liked. In 1967, Fripp joined the strange band Giles and Fripp, which was made up of brothers Michael and Peter Giles and mixed pop jazz with classical music. The group didn't do well in the music business, but Fripp started to play around with the idea of music as a living structure that wasn't just something to be heard, but also something to be understood and mentally felt. Building on that, he helped start King Crimson with a few other people in 1968. Not as a normal band, but as a kind of artistic statement for the whole group. Fripp never sang and didn't talk much in public, but he was in charge of everything creative, the arrangements, the sound, the stage attitude, and even the artwork for the albums. He saw the band as something that was always changing, and the music as something that was always getting better, no matter what the trends were. Their first record, In the Court of the Crimson King, came out in October 1969 and made a feeling happen right away. Over-the-top mellotron parts, wild, growling guitar lines, ritualistic melodies, and songs filled with visions of the end of the world were all in this album. It was called a mind-blowing explosion of vision by Rolling Stone. The Who's Pete Townsend said, "It's the first real masterpiece of progressive rock." Fripp wanted to be successful, but that wasn't his goal. Within a few months, there were problems within the group. A short time later, Ian MacDonald and Greg Lake both left. Others found it hard to work with Fripp because he was so picky about details and wouldn't give in. He was still not scared. Fripp thought that there were no real members of King Crimson. This was only meant to last for the music. To keep it up, I didn't make a band. I formed a band to discover what no one had heard before, Fripp once said. Over the next 5 years, he kept rotating the lineup and released albums like Lark's Tongues and Aspic, Starless and Bible Black, and Red, each radically different, extreme, and ahead of its time. Fripp wasn't seeking stability. He was pursuing something bigger, a kind of music capable of altering consciousness, both sacred and chaotic, and this was only the beginning. Career success at a time when progressive rock bands were reaching their commercial peak in the early 1970s, Robert Fripp quietly took a different path. To him, success wasn't about how many records were sold or how large the audience was. It was about how deeply music could reach into human consciousness. After King Crimson released 3 consecutive albums in 1973 to 1974, Lark's Tongues and Aspic, Starless and Bible Black Red, Fripp abruptly announced the band's dissolution. The reason? He felt that music was turning into a product rather than an experience. "We were no longer creating rituals. We were selling tickets," he said. While fans were bewildered and critics lamented the decision, Fripp withdrew from the stage and went into retreat. During this period, he studied under J.G. Bennett, a British mystic who taught Gurdjieff philosophy. Fripp participated in meditation courses, performed manual labor, and lived like a monk. He saw this as a process of cleansing the artist's mind so he could return to music untainted by ego. And when he returned, Fripp didn't reform King Crimson. Instead, he dove into a series of boundary-breaking projects, defying every convention. In 1977, he played on David Bowie's Heroes album. Was Fripp's haunting, distorted, long-sustained guitar work, sounding as if it echoed from another dimension, that gave the title track its surreal character. Bowie saw Fripp not just as a musician, but as a summoner of sound from beyond reality. That same year, he collaborated with Brian Eno, releasing No Pussyfooting and later Evening Star, pioneering ambient albums that used tape loop techniques Fripp dubbed Frippertronics. There were no clear melodies, no rhythms, only evolving layers of sound opening into a purely meditative sonic space. Fripp also appeared on Peter Gabriel's debut solo album, collaborated with Daryl Hall, Blondie, Talking Heads, and taught in his own workshops, where he passed on the idea of music as a spiritual path. In 1981, he revived King Crimson, but in an entirely new form. New lineup, new sound, new philosophy. The album Discipline marked a turning point, blending post-punk, minimalism, and meditative thought. While many old bands stagnated with recycled formulas, Fripp stayed a step ahead, never repeating himself. "I don't want to become the past of myself. I want the music to still be happening, not remembered," said Fripp. At every stage, he dismantled what he had built, not out of disdain, but because he refused stagnation. For Fripp, music wasn't a career, it was a ritual journey, sacred, transformative, and unending. Disputes, conflicts, and upheavals. Robert Fripp wasn't just an unpredictable artist, he was an extremely difficult person to work with. To Fripp, music was a sacred ritual, and anyone who failed to treat it with absolute seriousness was considered on a different plane of consciousness. Over more than 5 decades, King Crimson went through lineup changes almost with every album. Fripp never tried to keep the band stable, believing that stability led to stagnation. But this philosophy also sparked countless conflicts. Legendary drummer Bill Bruford once shared, "Fripp is a creative genius, but he demands total control. from every drum beat to how you stand on stage. Many musicians left Crimson in frustration, not because of the music, but because they couldn't endure the psychological pressure of working with him. Even longtime collaborators like Adrian Belew weren't immune to conflict. In 2013, Fripp announced his retirement from the music industry, citing a loss of faith in the mutual respect between artist and system. Not long after he reformed King Crimson, without inviting Belew back, causing controversy among fans. Fripp offered no explanation, stating only, "Emotion is not the measure of artistic decisions." But Fripp didn't only clash with fellow musicians. He waged a long and bitter battle with the record industry. For years, labels like EG Records were accused by him of exploiting King Crimson's copyrights and re-releasing recordings without his consent. Fripp wrote open letters and publicly condemned the music industry as structurally exploitative and ethically bankrupt. In the mid-1990s, he founded Discipline Global Mobile, DGM, his own record label, built on principles of transparency, fair profit sharing, and respect for creative rights. DGM became a reference model for many independent artists to follow. Another upheaval came from his public image. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Fripp unexpectedly appeared in a YouTube video series called Sunday Lunch, playing guitar while his wife, singer Toyah Willcox, dressed outrageously, danced, and sang rock classics. Many were stunned. Was this the same stoic Robert Fripp? The public was divided. Some claimed he was destroying the legendary image. Others saw, perhaps for the first time, that Fripp was genuinely having fun. Fripp's response was brief. If an artist can't laugh at himself, then he's worshiping his ego, not the music. He didn't apologize. He didn't explain. Because more than anyone, Robert Fripp understood this truth. The price of absolute freedom is being misunderstood your whole life. Personal life, offstage, Robert Fripp did not live like a rock legend. No parties, no mobs of fans, not even a TV in the living room. He lived like a modern-day hermit, waking at 6 a.m., practicing guitar in silence, meditating, reading philosophy, and recording every thought in fountain pen into worn leather-bound notebooks. But his personal life was not entirely solitary. In 1986, Fripp married singer-actress Toyah Willcox, a rebellious punk icon of 1980s Britain. It was a marriage no one saw coming. He, stoic, introspective, disciplined; she, fiery, free-spirited, unafraid to wear bright red lipstick and belled out. Want to be free, in the middle of a crowded street. They lived together in an old house in Worcestershire. Secluded, timeless, filled with books, instruments, and sunlight. No children, no scandals, no display. For over 3 decades, they've kept their life private. No music industry galas, no stepping into the celebrity circus. But within that quiet world, they shared one vital thing: absolute respect for individual freedom. Fripp once said, "Toyah doesn't need me to fully understand her. She needs me to allow her to be herself, and vice versa." While he immersed himself in experimental music projects, she acted in theater, appeared on television, wrote books, and painted. They didn't do everything together in the usual sense, but they were each other's safe place to return to. In 2020, as COVID-19 spread and the UK went into lockdown, Toyah had a quirky idea: film YouTube videos of the two of them performing rock songs in their kitchen. Fripp initially refused, but then agreed. Not for the music, but for her. And so the Sunday Lunch video series was born, featuring a sharply dressed stoic Fripp playing Metallica riffs on guitar while his wife danced wildly, dressed up in absurd costumes and shouted cheeky lyrics. The videos went viral, viewers laughed and scratched their heads. Was this really the cold, distant Fripp from King Crimson? He didn't care. This was how he expressed love, not through words, not in grand romantic gestures, but by giving the one he loved the freedom to live fully in her own way. Robert Fripp's personal life wasn't a gentle ballad. It was a counterpoint between stillness and motion, between meditation and rebellion, between philosophical silence and bursts of laughter echoing from the kitchen, and perhaps only in that life his music finally rest in peace. Legacy and influence: Robert Fripp never set out to become a legend, but by refusing to be an icon, he became the icon of refusal itself. In a music world where success is often measured by charts and follower counts, Fripp left behind a different legacy: radical creative independence and a musical philosophy no other artist has managed to replicate. Fripp's first and greatest impact was on progressive rock. King Crimson wasn't just a pioneering band in the genre. It was a continuous laboratory where rock, jazz, classical, ambient, noise, and even meditation collided, experimented, and transformed. Every album was its own universe, never repeated. Without King Crimson, there might not be Tool, Dream Theater, Porcupine Tree, or even Radiohead. Steven Wilson, leader of Porcupine Tree, once said, "King Crimson is the unfinished map of progressive rock, and Fripp is the one who drew every line with his own hands." But Fripp's influence extended beyond sound. He left behind an ideology, where the artist isn't someone who pleases the market, but one who searches for truth through every note. Through his label Disciplined Global Mobile, DGM, he championed transparency in earnings, defended artists' rights, and opposed the exploitation of creative intelligence for profit. In numerous writings and lectures, he emphasized, music is a moral act. If it's not honest, it dies before it's ever heard. His guitar craft school, founded in 1985, was another major legacy. It didn't just teach technique. It was a spiritual journey where students were trained in posture, breathing, silence, and how to listen to sound as a living being. Many renowned artists attended and later called it a meditation school through sound. Fripp also helped pave the way for modern ambient music, especially through his albums with Brian Eno, like No Pussyfooting and Evening Star. His Frippertronics technique, using tape loops to layer sound, would later influence everyone from Aphex Twin to Nine Inch Nails. And yet, perhaps Fripp's greatest legacy doesn't lie in any recording. It lies in the idea that an artist can live outside every system simply by staying true to their path. No media campaigns, no shouting for attention, just a guitar, an independent mind, and the courage to say no. A single honest note can outlast a fake career that spans 40 years, Fripp once wrote. And maybe, precisely because he never tried to become anyone else, Robert Fripp became himself. A singular, irreplaceable figure in the history of modern music. Present life. Robert Fripp will turn 79 in 2025. But unlike the image of an aging artist quietly living in nostalgia, he still wakes up at 6 a.m. every day, practices guitar, meditates, and records his thoughts in a leather-bound notebook kept by his bedside. To Fripp, age isn't an end point. It's just another stage in the creative journey. He and his wife, Toyah Willcox, still live in their old house in Worcestershire, where the stone walls are covered in moss, and the only sound each morning is the gentle hum of guitar strings. They don't throw parties, they don't entertain strangers, but they work every day as if still in their prime. After announcing his withdrawal from the music industry in 2012, Fripp was thought to have retired. But then he returned, stronger than ever. In 2013, he reformed King Crimson with a new lineup, not to follow the times, but to move against them. They released Radical Action to unseat the hold of Monkey Mind, Meltdown, Live in Mexico City, and performed shows like Sacred Rituals. No LED screens, no choreography, no colorful lights, just sound. Pure, raw, and uncompromising. Since 2020, Fripp has become unexpectedly famous in a way no one could have predicted as a YouTuber. In the Sunday Lunch video series, he appears in a sharp suit, playing heavy metal classics like Enter Sandman and Chop Suey, while Toyah dances, dresses up in outrageous costumes, screams lyrics, and sometimes cracks eggs on his head. The videos went viral, racking up millions of views, turning Fripp into a strange kind of internet icon, half real, half parody. Critics were confused, longtime fans were divided, but Fripp remained calm. "I don't perform to protect an image. I live, and living can look strange to those who are already dead inside." In 2024, he and Toyah continued their Sunday Lunch rock party tour across the UK, bringing both musical seriousness and domestic humor to small theaters. At the same time, Fripp kept releasing new ambient recordings and publishing essays on musical philosophy via DGM Live, a site he runs himself, managing everything from content to copyright. At nearly 80, Robert Fripp has nothing left to prove. There is no comeback because he never truly left. He merely moved to a different dimension, where the guitar still plays each morning, untouched by time, trends, or industry. And in a strange twist, Robert Fripp, the man who spent a lifetime avoiding the public, has become the most relatable legend social media has ever known. Robert Fripp never screamed to be noticed. He didn't live to be remembered, yet became one of the most unforgettable names in music. Not because of album sales or commercial triumphs, but because he remains living proof that it's possible to reject everything the industry demands and still endure proudly unbent. Fripp never tried to become a monument. He just tried to stay honest to each note he played, each thought he wrote down, each moment he lived. And through that honesty, he left an indelible mark, not on the charts, but on the minds of an entire generation of artists. At nearly 80, he doesn't deliver grand declarations or stage lavish farewell tours. He simply plays guitar each morning alongside his delightfully strange wife and continues to explore sound. Because for Robert Fripp, greatness doesn't lie in the spotlight. It lives in the silence between two notes, the place only the brave have the patience to hear. Have you ever listened to King Crimson? What do you think when you see someone like Fripp, nearly 80, still playing Metallica in the kitchen with his wife? Share your thoughts or the Fripp track you'll never forget in the comments below. And if you love stories about artists as unusual as this, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. The next journey will be even stranger than you expect.